Welcome in once again to the Talkin Tide podcast. I'm Chase Goodbread, sports columnist with the Tuscaloosa News. I'm joined by senior analyst Travis Reier of BamaOnline.com. 8A 2022 on tap for you, of course, in this edition of the Talkin Tide podcast here on the Sunday Nighter. I want to thank our sponsors really quickly, Peterborough Chocolatier of Tuscaloosa, North River Dental Associates, as always, and of course, our corporate sponsor, DraftKings. More on them a little bit later in the program. Talkin Tide, of course, available to you at our web host at megaphone.com. You can also catch us on any podcasting app you prefer, including Apple Podcasts. We are on YouTube and Facebook Live and recorded as well. Video, audio, whatever you prefer. Talkin Tide is coming at you. The Twitter feed, Talkin_Tide. Follow us there for links to all our podcasts. As we move on, Travis, and discuss 8A 2022, a resounding victory for the White Squad, 25-7. Of course, the white team featuring the first team defense, the second team offense. And Travis, it was largely a mismatch in this one.
Yeah, I think if there had been a line for this game beforehand, the white team would have had to have been the pretty solid favorite anyway. Even with Bryce Young quarterbacking the Crimson team, that defense with Will Anderson and Henry To'oTo'o, Jordan Battle, a lot of guys that have been impactful and played a lot of football. And, some of the deficiencies that you wondered about with this team going into Saturday scrimmage showed up once again. And that being said, I don't like to go too overboard with just taking apart a spring game, because really the biggest success to come from Saturday's game, given the weather forecast and the elements that were in play, was that they got this thing in. It was, I think, somewhat condensed in some ways, but that was the good news. They got it in. Able to celebrate Wilbur Jackson and John Mitchell. That was very, very good. So, it's always been more about the day than anything else. So, all things considered, I think it was a success.
Condensed for sure, a running clock for one thing, and for another, Travis, an abbreviated halftime for sure. The halftime was over in a blink of an eye, really. I figured I'd have a little bit of time in between halves to write a little bit for the T News, catch up a little bit, grab a bite, and no, they're right back out on the field, ready to go in that third quarter. So no doubt, probably fewer total snaps, certainly as a result. But you're right. It's difficult to judge things, no question about it, in a spring game when you're talking about a defense with as much experience and overall talent as Alabama's had against an offense that's clearly still trying to find its footing, particularly along the offensive line, but as well with the receiving core. And if you go back, Travis, and you listen to Nick Saban's comments after the first closed scrimmage and after the second closed scrimmage, you saw a lot of what he's been talking about throughout spring practice in A-Day. In other words, too many drop passes. We saw a number of those, particularly in the rain, and as well, big struggles in pass protection and in general, just kind of a lack of cohesion offensively that eventually come this fall when Alabama starts playing teams with different uniforms, it's going to have to start with the pass pro, really.
It is, and that's where you kind of had some things reaffirmed for you, as you said on Saturday, in that particular area, and why Tyler Steen became a coveted transfer target from Vanderbilt, and why the expectation for him from day one will be to step in at one of those tackle positions. And even if that does play out, you still have another tackle spot that's up for grabs. And, I think at the wide receiver position, it was just a really tough grade, tough evaluation on Saturday. And you're right, there were some drops. JoJo Earl had a couple. They had their struggles at times holding on to the football. But man, when plays are getting wrecked, but before we even get a step and a half, into the pass rush or so, that's tough to to make everything else sort of play out. And Dick Saban pointed to that too. But, I still wonder, even with that taken into consideration, Chase, yeah, you like Jermaine Burton coming in. You like what you saw from a guy like Christian Leary. He gave you some of that explosiveness that you still wonder about with this offense, and why Alabama may not be done in the transfer portal just yet. That's where you're going to consider, what the options really are for this team moving into fall camp. Understanding you should have Ja'Cory Brooks back, but Tyler Harrell from Louisville has become a candidate now in the transfer portal at the wide receiver position, and the reason simple: he's got vertical speed.
Can get down the field in a hurry. I believe he's been clocked in the 4.2s in the 40-yard dash. So yeah, Tyler Harrell out of Louisville can definitely fly. Had a pretty fat yards per catch average last season for the Cardinals, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, maybe not done. Of course, there's a deadline coming up in a couple of weeks, Travis, to even be eligible for the fall. You got to get into the portal. I guess you don't have to pick your destination, I don't think, by May 1, but you got to be in that portal by May 1. Isn't that right?
I think that's right. You've also had an SEC window in regards to that, but as a grad transfer, the rules are different. So that's where Tyler Steen sort of falls in, I believe, and with the 2 years of eligibility that he'll come to Alabama with. So, I did think, though, in talking about Chase, things that we anticipated and things that played out. Well, certainly you anticipated the edge pass rushers being dominant, and that was the case with Will Anderson and Chris Braswell, Dallas Turner combining for 7 sacks. But Jahmyr Gibbs showed you, right, that explosiveness too on that 75-yard touchdown run. And, he has 9 carries for 100 yards. I think that's a line we could see from Jahmyr Gibbs come the fall. You see some lines in spring games and you go, yeah, that's impressive, but I don't think we're going to see that, come the fall. I think Jahmyr Gibbs showed you that he's capable, and I think he'll have more than 9 carries in a lot of games, but um, he can be very efficient, I guess is what I'm trying to say here with his touches.
There's no doubt in my mind he'll be one. We'll assume for the moment that Nick Saban is going to go with a 2-back rotation. That's been his MO. He's had a year or two where he's leaned more on just one guy, but generally it's a 2-man rotation. Gibbs will be one of those two. The question will be, who will the other be? Will it be Trey Sanders? Will it be a Jace McClellan, perhaps? That remains to be seen. Fall camp will answer that question. But Jahmyr Gibbs, particularly with his explosiveness, his big play ability, his receiving ability, he's got to be on the field a good bit for Alabama in the fall.
I would think so. And I thought, a way that Bill O'Brien and the offensive staff members on Saturday tried to combat some of that pass rush was, for a spring game, I thought we saw them dump it to the backs a pretty good bit, throw it to him. And, we didn't really see much of Gibbs in that capacity, but absolutely he's done it at Georgia Tech. So I think that's another area of the game that he'll impact, along with kickoff returns, which we saw him back deep when they worked on some of that Saturday as well. So just explosive play production in general, with Williams moving on and John Mechie moving on. And, Burton to me has always been more of a John Mechie comp than a Jamison Williams comp.
Right.
And if it plays out that way, it's great. But you still need that 18 to 20 yards per catch guy, which Jamison Williams definitely was last season.
And Tyler Harrell potentially could fill that role if he ends up coming to Alabama out of that transfer portal. A lot of ifs there. Does he come? Does he not? Does he perform? Does he not? All that remains to be seen. But yeah, maybe Alabama not quite done in that transfer portal. How about backup quarterbacks, Travis? Let's talk about those for a couple of minutes. Jalen Milroe with some impressive throws, some inaccurate throws as well. He was a little wild at times, but had a couple of fabulous throws and really flashed some impressive athleticism, I thought. He had a rush of 22. He had another of 18. And some of these runs, Travis, when you see a guy that size moving that fast down the field, and all it takes is a hand on a jersey for the whistle to blow, There was a lot more yardage in him had that been a real game on the ground. I mean,
well, he lost a touchdown run that ended
yeah.
up being a field goal there in the first quarter. I mean, Monkel Goodwine, good for him. He had containment. He did his job, and he still was going to miss. But he was credited with a tackle because maybe he got a fingernail or two on Jalen Milroe on that zone keep. But that's a touchdown if we're playing regular football. So he showed you, I thought, improvement throwing the football. I think it's been gradual for him. The deep ball to Christian Leary was a thing of beauty. He had the mistake on the interception where he got some pressure up into his face from a blitzing Deonte Lawson, and pass pro could have been better there, could have helped him out. But you miss high over the middle. We know what's going to happen at this level. But what I liked about him too was that didn't seem to impact him negatively. He came right back and exuded confidence, which you would expect to see more so out of a second-year player than say an early enrollee in Ty Simpson. But I thought Simpson showed some good things as well himself. Second quarter, he hit Taiu Jones-Bell on an outcut. That was a high-level SEC throw, and his pocket acumen and polish at this point, and he looked like a son of a coach in a lot of ways. Showed you some of that, and I like both those guys because you won't hear it as much with Ty Simpson, but he can do enough with his legs to make a defense account for that aspect of his game as well.
Yeah, Simpson, I thought, showed a lot of athleticism as well. That the pocket was breaking down pretty quick on him as well. Really, all the quarterbacks, not just Bryce Young, especially Bryce Young, but not only Bryce Young. And I thought Simpson looked good as well. He's got a strong arm. There's a lot of velocity on his ball. Jalen Milroe, what stood out to me is the quickness of that release, Travis.
Mm-hmm.
It's the quickest release on the roster. I mean, it's just a wrist flick, and that ball is out of there, and it comes out with some RPMs, and that's not. It's an asset, and it's an asset because it can be the difference between a strip sack and a touchdown pass when you're talking about the difference between the quickness with which Milroe can get it off versus somebody who might have a long windup, right?
Yeah. It's that was something with Paul Tyson in his time at Alabama that you continually wondered about. Is this guy going to get to a point where the ball gets out quick enough? And I thought Paul did improve in that area. And apparently he's in competition at Arizona State now that he's moved on out to Tempe. But yeah, as far as these two guys, I thought it was very encouraging what we saw on Saturday. And Milroe too, he's sort of taken on this perception of being more dual threat than pocket guy. So that's what you wanted to see from him. But he did show you again. You're right. When he did break the pocket, he didn't just get separation by a little bit. A lot of times he was leaving people at his size. That's very impressive. But I also liked that when he did move or escape the pocket, he was still looking to make some throws. He wasn't just automatically transitioning into runner mode. He would still try to find an open receiver and get the ball to him.
Certainly sounds as though Milroe for the moment is a clear number two. Nick Saban commenting that that as much potential and promise as they see in Ty Simpson, still needs practice reps, as many as he can get. Of course, I believe he was an early enroller, so he's gotten as many as possible up to this point, certainly. But as they go into the fall, I would imagine Milroe will be your number two quarterback at Alabama. The Talkin Tide podcast right here on megaphone.com. A lot to get into. We're going to talk Alabama's defense in A-Day. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our sponsors. We're going to start letting you know about North River Dental Associates, 1100 Fairfax Park in Tuscaloosa, right off of Watermelon Road. Dr. Jack Smalley does such a great job with his professional staff of dental hygienists. They do it all over there: cosmetic dentistry, porcelain veneers, pediatric dentistry for the kids, the teeth whitening services. You got to check those out. Also doing Botox and Juvederm treatments for those facial features. Again, it's North River Dental Associates. Dr. Jack Smalley, former Alabama football player, was in a Crimson Tide uniform under Paul W. Bear Bryant back in his day, and now he is scoring touchdowns with people's teeth over there at North River
Absolutely.
Tunnel. Phone number 752-3506. You can also go online to make an appointment. That website is northriverdentist.com. It's North River Dental Associates.
I'm going to tell you about Peterborough Chocolatier coming off a big week there in the Indian Hill section of Tuscaloosa. And I know Heather and Paula and Jimmy and the rest of that great staff would love to thank the customers of Peterborough Chocolatier. Made it a great week in advance of Easter 2022. So thank you to everyone who made Peterborough Chocolatier their destination, their chocolate destination of choice for their Easter goodies. And you're going to have Mother's Day coming up real soon here too. So going to have that in a couple of 3 weekends. Got to take care of mama. Got to take care of the kids this summer too. Got the summer camps coming up. Summer chocolate camps at Peterborough Chocolatier. Call them at 205-752-0211. They'll give you all the information. Peterborough Chocolatier, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North.
Finally, going to tell you about our corporate sponsor. That would be DraftKings. The NBA playoffs mean next level basketball. You can get in on first round action with the DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. This week, new customers can bet $5 on any team to win and get $150 in free bets instantly. If they do, you win either way. All DraftKings Sportsbook customers can also bet on NBA hoops with same game parlays. You can combine multiple bets from the same game for a bigger payout. Plus, each day of the first round, get a risk-free bet up to $10 if your same game parlay doesn't hit. That's the DraftKings Sportsbook. Use the promo code TPPN. That's the Pigskin Podcast Network, and they will get you taken care of. Download that DraftKings Sportsbook app. Bet $5 on any NBA team to win their game during the first round of the playoffs. Get $150 in free bets instantly with promo code TPPN at the DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Travis, with the minutes we have remaining here in the podcast, figured we would turn to the Alabama defense on A-Day. We spent the front end talking primarily about offense, not exclusively, but a couple things that stood out to me defensively. I liked what I saw from Jamil Burroughs on the interior of the defensive line. Alabama could use somebody, whether it's Burroughs, whether it's Tim Smith, whoever. They need a step-up guy in the pass rush on the interior. They certainly got all the pass rush they need on the edges. Who's going to bring that push up the middle? Maybe it's Burroughs. I thought he looked good in that regard on Saturday.
Yeah, he did. Did a nice job of, on one play, I guess, splitting J.C. Latham and Cameron Latou and getting in there to make a sack. And he was disruptive. There's no doubt about it. Going into his third year in the program, that's where you would hope he would be. But you're right. They need some guys in that area to go along with those edge defenders. I thought Burroughs also, we got so caught up in the edge guys and the questions about offensive tackle. I think Burroughs maybe helped you appreciate Emil Ekiyor a little bit more, and the fact that he wasn't in there at right guard, and you'll have him back in fall camp. I think that gave Alabama fans something else to be thankful for. But yeah, Burroughs looked good. There has been a lot of buzz about him throughout the spring in regards to taking another step and becoming more of a legitimate rotational guy. And he looks like he's going to have that opportunity with maybe more of an emphasis on the dime rabbits. And but yeah, I'd say when you consider interior options specifically, Burroughs looks like he's ready to be one of those.
10 sacks total for the first team defense, 2 each for Chris Braswell, Will Anderson, and the aforementioned Burroughs. Dallas Turner with 3, Jalen Moody with 1. So, again, it's just a tag on the quarterback. It's non-contact, of course. And if you happen to watch the replay on the digital stream here on Sunday, we're live. You kind of saw how difficult it was on the quarterbacks in general with the with that format. Nevertheless, lots of pressure for sure. Jordan Battle came up with an interception for the Crimson Tide. That I thought was, that came right after Milroe's interception, I believe, and they turned right around and got Bryce Young on a throw down the middle. A nice play by Jordan Battle. Lots of experience in that secondary, Travis, particularly in down the middle when you're talking about the safeties, the slot corners, nickel, dime, Branch, Moore. It's a veteran group in the middle of the field back there.
Really is. And there's a nice sense of security because of that when you talk about the sub package guys and then also the returning starters at safeties. But, I think even in terms of depth, they're starting to build some nice things there. And, at corner, that competition is obviously going well because I thought Kyrie Jackson and Kool-Aid McKinstry did some good things. Eli Ricks working with the twos looked good. Terry and Arnold really had the lone blemish for the corners in that he had the pass interference call on him while trying to defend a deep ball with Kenrick Law, excuse me. I'm going way back with Kendrick Law. Kenrick Law there. Really the only thing the secondary gave up of note anyway, down the field was the deep ball to Leary, which was a heck of a catch on a great ball against Malachi Moore. So, I'd say the secondary certainly benefited from the pass rush. There's no doubt about that. But they answered the bell themselves.
They did, and as you noted, some guys that I expect to see a lot of time on the field in the fall ended up playing for the twos on defense. Eli Ricks certainly being one of them. Deonte Lawson conceivably could be a starting inside linebacker next to Henry Toa. That could come into play come the fall as well. And Malachi Moore, who of course has got a lot of game experience for the Crimson Tide. He played on that Crimson defense as well. And I thought they showed well as well. 5 sacks for that group. As I mentioned, they got some pressure of their own, several pass breakups. Lawson had one. Jahad Campbell had one as well. So really, it's an exciting group on the defensive side of the ball. There's no doubt about it. And the experience in the secondary and the pressure on the edges. Those are the two. That's what this defense has going for them the most.
Yeah, Jeremiah Alexander, I thought in the second half, the early enrollee did some nice things on the edge in a pass rush scenarios. And as a 5-star, you kind of expect some of that. But, they're in a good spot too in that you can see the talent that they continue to accumulate. But with what they bring back on defense, they're not as much in a situation as they've been maybe in recent years where they've had to expedite that development of some guys, right? I mean, I think there's Jahad Campbell. There's been years where they might be trying to rush him onto the field like Christian Harris and Shane Lee in 2019. They shouldn't be in that situation. If it comes about in a way that he's ready to help this fall, great. If not, special teams, depth provider, a reasonable development for a guy like him, Sean Murphy and Alexander, some of these other guys. So, no, they're in a very good situation right now. I thought Jahim Otis, too. We had heard about, his weight loss that he has undergone since stepping on campus, the big man there, the early enrollee at the nose tackle position. And just seeing a little bit of that guy on Saturday, the thing that struck me was imagine what this guy's going to look like in a year's time. And you can say that for a lot of these early enrollees, but man, it is a good looking bunch, another good looking bunch. And through the lens of a year from now, you really start to be impressed by what should be for 2023.
There's always going to be room, no matter how spread out the game gets. There's always going to be room for an Otis type guy on the roster for short yardage, for goal line,
yep,
et cetera. And those guys, even in the spread out game, when those guys are strong enough and explosive enough to overpower a single block and command two, it makes a big difference even when things are spread out.
No doubt. And I said what I said, not to discount the possibility of a number of those guys helping in 2022. It's just nice that it can come about organically, it seems, because of the depth they have especially in the front seven. There's room on the edge still, even with the three guys that we know are going to be the primary options at outside linebacker. You can still use a fourth or fifth guy because, as we saw in 2021, injuries start happening. You get down to that fourth, fifth guy pretty quick. So, Alexander, DeMoy Kennedy flashed, I thought, on the edge a little bit. So that was good to see. And, there's the possibility of getting some help really across the board. But they return in a good spot on that side. There's no doubt about that.
Before we close things out, Travis, really quickly, I guess we'll hit on special teams, not to go unmentioned. Half a dozen field goals in this one, a couple of them chip shots from really short range, but good to see Will Reichard, Jack Martin connecting on 3 field goals as well. In the return game, we saw Kool-Aid McKinstry back on a punt return. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to factor in on kickoff return, maybe punt return as well. Could be an exciting group back there.
Yeah, a lot of great options. The kickers were outstanding. 4 field goals of 40 yards or more. So you're right. There were some chip shots, but I thought Martin and Reichard were not just good on their kicks. They were damn near perfect. So I think there's still questions as much as anything about James Burnett in the punting situation. And, maybe again, they're going to be so good and productive offensively, it won't matter as much, but at some point it's going to. And so his continued development will be important. And you're right, the return game, I got to think Gibbs is, barring something unforeseen, is going to be the on guy back there with the 2 guys that they put back. But in the punt return game, you saw Jermaine Burton, Kool-Aid McKinstry. They've got JoJo Earl back. So a lot of great options from which to choose at that spot.
It's going to do it for this edition of the Talkin Tide podcast on the Pigskin Podcast Network. For Travis Reier of BamaOnline.com, I'm Chase Goodbread, sports columnist of the Tuscaloosa News. Be sure to join us next week for the upcoming edition of the Talkin Tide podcast. Look forward to talking to you then here on Talkin Tide.